Hey, it's Vanessa Vaughn, the founder and chief resilience officer of Asfalis Advisors. I'm here for another session, the Crisis Corner Cafe. We're speaking on the topic of the gun business. Who's paying for it? Again, these are informal videos designed for chief security officers, chief risk officers, and chief operating officers. Those of you who are responsible for safety, security, and the operations, right? And so, what are some of those risks, challenges, and threats that can impact your organization from an internal perspective as well as externally? So feel free to ask questions. We always leave the list of articles that we've used to kind of bring up and highlight some topics of interest and conversation. We love to begin with the end in mind. So, what I thought was pretty intriguing is that in 2018, there were over 40,000 gun related deaths in America. A couple weeks ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, the University of North Carolina Charlotte campus was impacted by a student who came in on the last day of school, of final exams, and decided to open fire in a classroom. And it has ripped through our community. It is impactful. It is sad. It's hard because Charlotte is a small town with big city flavor. And there's not a person that you can come into contact with that doesn't know a student, an alumni, or a faculty member at UNCC. So it's been a pretty tough challenge to work with people in the community whose sons and daughters were on campus when this happened. There was even an Asfalis team member who was studying to get her doctoral program at UNCC who was on campus 40 minutes before the shooting took place. And so this is really something that hits home, that is on the hearts and minds of everyone around us locally. And so, from an Asfalis advisor's perspective, I definitely want to send our condolences, our prayers, and our support to those of you who have been impacted by that incident. One of the things I thought was pretty interesting, if we think about guns and violence from a global perspective, is that the United States has actually higher rates of violent gun deaths than Afghanistan, Iraq, Turkey, and Iran. And so it's pretty interesting research, because when we think about what we see through social media or on the news, we would think that those countries may be experiencing higher violent gun deaths than we are. But to know that our country, the home of the free, um, is experiencing higher gun deaths than some of the folks in the Middle East, is just really alarming. And it says a lot about, where we should probably focus and spend our time. So, Vanessa, the gun business, how does this relate to business, and who's paying for it? That's the topic of the Crisis Corner Cafe. Well, what I thought that you should know is that America's gun business is a $28 billion business. Schools are spending $2.7 billion a year on security measures. Our government, from a domestic homeland security perspective, spends an average of $65 billion per year, and they've been spending that amount of money between 2002 to 2017. To build a gun or to sell a gun, you have to manufacture it, you have to build it, you have to market that gun. Who's your target market? Who are you selling it to? And then you have to create the financing to actually sell that particular product and drive your metrics. Just like any other business, you make it, you move it, and you sell it. And that's essentially what goes into the gun business as well. It's no different than most business models. One of the challenges, though, that's been a topic of conversation are manufacturers who produce military style weapons, especially those that are produced for the general public, right? What's the need from a general public perspective? So let's get into a little bit more about reputational risks and impacts that companies are facing. So, after the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, Delta Airlines, Hertz, the rental car company, as well as several other companies, broke ties with the NRA. Retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods made guns harder to buy, as well as influential Wall Street figures such as Lawrence Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. He publicly came out and embraced gun safety efforts. And so people have been taking a look at, again, public opinion and how our consumers really create the demand and the conversation and really drive business to make more informed decisions. And so, from a reputational business perspective, where you lie from a gun control standpoint is coming up, and it's at the top of minds of people, especially those that have been impacted by guns within our country. Some banks have actually already started to revise their policies and their practices on firearms. Citigroup said in March of 2018 that it would only work with clients that agreed to certain restrictions on firearm sales. So they're already taking a stance and tying that into policies and procedures. Bank of America said that it would stop lending to companies that made military inspired firearms for civilian use. Well, subsequently, they've been criticized for their commitment to contribute $43.2 million in bankruptcy financing for Remington. Remington is one of America's oldest gun manufacturers who filed for bankruptcy. BB&T has spent about $147 million from 2012 to 2016 financing the gun business. JP Morgan Chase has contributed $21,000 to politicians who strongly support the NRA. Wells Fargo has spent $471 million in loans and credit to gun makers since 2012. Yet they've spent $10 million studying gun violence. So, Vanessa, how do we solve the problem? Can I really prevent an active shooter from coming into my place of work, from coming into my data center, for coming into my school, for coming into my retail store, for coming into my home, from coming into my church, from coming into my daycare facility, from coming into my yoga facility? Can I prevent an active shooter from coming into my brewery, my restaurant, a park? And the short answer is you can implement strategies to reduce the risk and reduce the threat. But when I walk in the movie theater to go see a movie and I'm sitting down and someone at the front of the movie theater stands up and begins to open fire, what can I do as a civilian? Unless we're going to start patting people down all over the world, which would take money and resources and people to do that, right? We have to pay for security guards. We have to train them and make sure that they're qualified, which is going to be an increase in our costs and in our expenses, because that's now something that where you go to watch your favorite movie is going to have to factor that in. So imagine your movie prices going from $10 to $16 up to $50 because of security measures and protocols. These are the things that tie into business decisions when it comes to guns. So the question is, who's paying for it, right? Who's paying for it? So we talked about the banks, how they financed it. We talked about companies and the manufacturing process. We've also talked about the lives that have been lost and the families that have suffered as a result of our country's desire to really not tackle this problem and think about it collaboratively. So again, how do we solve this problem? The simple answer is that it's complicated, it's emotional, and it is deeply intertwined into American politics, as well as the American people who feel a sense of power and control, as well as the fact that it's tied into our Constitution. But in the words of my dear counterpart and great friend, mentor, coach, Felix Nader, said it best on a recent interview regarding the UNCC shooting. And it's 2 words that he provided. And how do we solve this problem? Situational awareness. We need to be situationally aware. What does that mean? Be cognizant of what's happening around you. Be cognizant of the people that you're around. Tune into them. What's going on? How are they feeling? How are they acting? What are they communicating to you? In reality, safety and security is not the sole responsibility of your chief security officer. It's not the sole responsibility of your safety officer. It's not the sole responsibility of human resources. And it's not the sole responsibility of your CEO. Safety and security is your responsibility. We've gotten so desensitized as a country. We've been so separated from one another because we spend all of our time in our phone, and we're constantly texting and swiping and tapping likes, that we forget about people and how to have a conversation and how to build a relationship. So think about that. I challenge you to have those conversations. Talk to people. In most scenarios, when people ask, did you know? There's always one person that comes back and says, you know, I saw that sign, but I didn't say anything. Why did you say something? So I challenge you, if you're watching this video, say something. So Vanessa, if I'm at work, if I'm at home, if I'm at school, should I run, hide, fight? What should I do? You'll see documentation about run, hide, fight. And through the years, there's been some involvement and evolving of the ALICE response to active shooters, which ALICE simply stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evaluate. And the reason that is because sometimes we run to hide. We hide and we don't plan for the exit strategy to actually get out of there, and we barricade ourselves into a place where we're not going to be successful, and we're decreasing the opportunity for us to evacuate and for us to survive. And then our last opportunity is to fight. And in real honesty, in our training programs that we do at Asfalis Advisors, we talk about, we want you to perform like a pilot when we're talking about crisis management. If we're not practicing these things consistently, it's hard to really test your skills and your ability, and for you to kind of think through those scenarios, right? It's a challenge. It's also very clear and, something for us to consider. You don't know what you're going to do when you hear a gunshot or when you hear guns pointed at you, because it's scary. It's not something that you wake up expecting, I'm going to get shot and killed today, or I'm going to be in an active shooter scenario today. That's not something that we think about. So I'm going to stop here. I want to know, what do you think? Has an active shooter or a workplace violence shooting happened in your environment? What was your response? How has your leadership team reacted or responded? What measures, what controls have you put in place? How do you foresee the business of guns? Who's paying for it from your perspective? Again, this is Vanessa Vaughn, the founder and chief resilience officer of Asfalis Advisors. Thank you for tuning in to the Crisis Corner Cafe. Please go to our website for more exclusive content and to learn more about what you can do to protect and prepare your business and your employees.